I'm going to discuss what I consider to be a fascinating chapter in American history. It is what has become known as the Satanism Scare, or Satanic Panic. During the 1980s and early 90s, there were rumors of a national or international network of underground Satan worshippers who performed bizarre rituals that included torture, sexual abuse, and even sacrifice of people, mostly children. Many members of law enforcement and the media took these rumors seriously to the point that people were incarcerated, blackballed, and harassed based on nothing more than a collective paranoid fantasy. In this video series, I will be discussing the history of the satanic underground rumor mill and the impact that it had on our society at the time. This includes some analysis as to how these strange witch hunt type events could have occurred so recently. And in the description of this video, there are links to good articles on the subject for those who are interested in learning more about it. When I mention an article that I have provided a link for, I will indicate that by showing a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so you're not rolling on the floor, but kind of cute, eh? I will start back in 1973 with the publication of a book called The Satan Seller by Mike Warnke. This book was claimed to be an autobiographical account of the author's involvement with a satanic cult in 1966. Warnke claimed that he became the high priest of this cult before giving his life to Jesus while serving in Vietnam. The popularity of this book launched a ministry for Warnke as well as a career as a Christian comedian. In 1992, Mike Hertenstein and John Trott of Cornerstone Magazine, a Christian publication, exposed Warnke as a fraud. The entire account of his involvement with the satanic cult were all fabrications. Prior to the Cornerstone article, the events described in the Satan Seller were considered to be true by a portion of the evangelical Christian community and even some people outside that community. According to the Cornerstone article, a generation of Christians learned its basic concepts of Satanism and the occult from Mike Warnke's testimony in the Satan Seller. Based on his alleged satanic experiences, Warnke came to be recognized as a prominent authority on the occult, even advising law enforcement officers investigating occult crime. We believe the Satan Seller has been responsible more than any other single volume in the Christian market for promoting the current nationwide Satanism scare.
Good evening, friends and initiates. Welcome to my admittedly uncomfortable underground lair. Everything should be in order. The stone table, the torches hanging from the stone walls, the brown hooded cloaks, the 7 daggers, the fire pit, and the big gaudy pip chalices of blood. Everything is here, everything that is defined by Christians. All of these trappings are just as Christian as can be. The rituals, the number symbolism, especially the brown cloaks. The thing is, fellow seekers of the strange and weird, none of this is weird enough to escape the imagination of a pink Southern Baptist. Some of them have made their brilliant careers by claiming to have been high initiates, or acolytes, or ascended masters of the Church of Satan, a giant worldwide underground cult where children are bred or taken from daycare centers to feed the sexual needs of the Hollywood and Washington power elite. It was probably briefly the fastest growing career in the 90s, that and brightening careers for psychotherapists. So, lie back comfortably in your coffins and listen to Godless Panther in part 1 of his YouTube series, Satanic Panic.
Oh, hi there.
This may be true, as in, The Satan Seller was the first book to suggest that there is such a thing as a national satanic conspiracy. Warnke claimed that his cult had 1,500 members in 3 cities. His involvement with this group is said to have started with his enrollment at the 2-year college San Bernardino Valley College in California in 1965. Here is where he started drinking heavily, then turned to drugs. He grew his hair down to his waist. He volunteered for LSD experiments at the college. He became a major drug dealer and was shot a few times. And then he joined what he called a coven. Mike Hertenstein and John Trott investigated the claims by contacting people who knew Warnke. It was revealed that all of these outlandish tales were, of course, false. The Satan Seller was marketed to evangelical Christians. It was a bestseller in that community. The evangelicals are a gullible lot. Outside that community, there are very few people who would find the book believable. But the Satan Seller did lay the groundwork for the satanic panic yet to come. Even 17 years after Cornerstone revealed that the book is a bunch of hooey, there are people who are still insisting that it is true. One of them is Mike Warnke himself. The book is still available. One can order it from Amazon. It is published by Logos Associates and retails for $29.99. The Amazon customer reviews demonstrate how there are people who still believe Warnke. One review reads, "Wow, I can't believe the difference in reviews. You can definitely tell who the Christians are and who are not. If you want the knowledge of what it is like to have your child messed up with cults or Satanism, you need to read this book. There is no fantasy. People seem to want to call it fantasy, but it is not. This is the real forces of the world. As it is said in the Bible, Satan is the prince of the world, and this is a sample of his work." Reference, John 12:31. I highly recommend this book to those who want a glimpse of what Satan can and does to the young and old. Although it is disturbing reading, I would suggest you reading it first before your teenager does. I think maybe people want to call it a fantasy because it is too much to handle, and it is a lot to come to terms with. Sometimes the truth is hardest to face up to." End quote. Mike Hertenstein and John Trott have since written a full-length book on the subject of Mike Warnke and called Selling Satan. This is also available at Amazon for $14.35.
Did you ever take a walk on a pale night through a deserted cemetery? Spooks all around, shadows on the ground. Didn't know could be so scary. Every little thing gonna be alright. Ghost rock and roll.
Reviews of this book reveal some of the hostility that Warnke loyalists have toward the authors who exposed the fraud. One review reads, "Having grown up in the Warnke era, I was fascinated by this book. However, having recently met Mr. Warnke in person and having a one-on-one discussion with him, I feel that this book is just another anti-religion propaganda work of the liberal left. The media hates people of any religious inclination and will stop at nothing to destroy them, come what may. Americans are daily brainwashed by the Hollywood media and their cavalcade of overzealous left-wing promoters. Give me a break. Most Americans do not agree with the Hollywood way of life, yet our politicians, most especially those who are Democrats, bow down to the god of Hollywood and try and cram their beliefs down the throats of all Americans. Take a Valium. This is worthless drivel below anyone beyond a second-grade education and certainly beyond those of us who actually graduate from college. Mike Warnke was waylaid by the liberal left. He is a man of integrity, and this expose is nothing more than communist Nazi propaganda." End quote. I might add that Cornerstone Magazine is put out by the Jesus People Church. This is a much more liberal brand of Christianity. They are descendants of the Jesus freaks from the 1960s. The folks who wanted to be groovy hippies, but they did not want to abandon their religion that they were raised with. So they combined the two. They even published their own version of the Bible in which Jesus says things like, "Hey man, that's not too cool." The people who believe in the Satan cellar are those who believe in the literal existence of the devil. They tend toward paranoid fantasy, apocalyptic fantasy, delusions of persecution, the Antichrist, etc. It is a fairly isolated group of people. They often avoid mainstream society as much as possible because they are afraid of being poisoned by secular culture. They are prone to conspiracy theories, so it is not that much of a stretch for them to envision a widespread, interconnected satanic cult that operates just under the radar. So how did the beliefs of this fringe culture spill over into mainstream society to the extent that it did? The answer to that question starts with the publication of a book called Michelle Remembers in 1980. This book is about a young woman who had repressed memories resurface through hypnosis by her therapist. That very therapist, Lawrence Pazder, co-wrote the book with Michelle Smith.
Follow me straight down to hell where disco demons used to dwell. I've got a brand new tale to tell at Satan's Country Line Dance. Disco music had its day, the damned want something new to play. Beyond that burning bale of hay, it's Satan's Country Line Dance. Pickup trucks with gun racks gleam, good old boys drink kerosene. Their necks are red, their teeth are green, grease your pig with Vaseline. Bump and grind with Billy Bob. He shot his boss and lost his job. His girlfriend left him for his dog at Satan's Country Line Dance. Old Billy Ray, he hit his stride with one hit song, I Can't Abide. It's achy breaky genocide at Satan's Country Line Dance. Now any fool can plainly see you shouldn't marry family. But if you do, you get in free. Come on, my dear, and dance with me. Should you choose the surface world, nobody here will blame ya. But me, I'd rather rot in hell than do the Macarena. Well, Satan finally had his fill. He runs them doggies down the hill. The music stops, they all stand still at Satan's Country Line Dance. That devil flashed an evil grin, then one by one he pushed them in the burning pit of smoke and sin at Satan's Country Line Dance. The flames begin to flicker, and then all at once they shout. All that beer and cellulite just snuffed the fire out. Now life in hell is cool and bright. We all watch hee-haw day and night. Has anybody got a light at Satan's Country Line Dance? It's always hell at the line dance. Ha!
Between 1973 and 1980, there were several other accounts by alleged ex-Satanists from authors such as John Todd and Herschel Smith. But these did not have nearly the impact that Michelle Remembers did. There is a very good 3-part article on a site called Witchfox where one can read an in-depth analysis of this fairy tale. This fabrication is the first that describes a multi-generational, interconnected, conspiratorial, satanic cult that soon afterward became an obsession for a portion of societies around the world. Michelle Remembers, though thoroughly debunked, is also still available. Not only that, but as with Warnke's heap of fatuous codswallop, there are also those who insist that Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pastor's pile of pointless poppycock is also true. A review from Amazon states, quote, I pastor a church in the Dallas, Texas area. It never ceases to amaze me just how much Satan will attack these writings to cover up his activities. My wife grew up around Satanism and was an SRA victim growing up. She went on to practice witchcraft but came to Christ around the age of 29. I assure you that this book and others like this are very real. This is a must-read for any Christian as we move into the end times. End quote. There were a few reviewers on Amazon who stated that they did not care if it were true or not. This mentality is common among the deeply religious. Whether something is true or false is an irrelevant little detail that can be overlooked. They really don't understand why a person would investigate a claim to find out whether or not it's valid. Michelle and her therapist, Pastor, the man she married after the bullshit was published, launched a wave of people claiming to be ritual abuse victims going public with their horrific tales of satanic cult victimization. I will bring up one more book before going on to the next stage of satanic panic. In 1988, Laurel Rose Wilson had a book published under the pseudonym Lauren Stratford called Satan's Underground: The Story of One Woman's Escape. Television programs, Oprah Winfrey, Larry King, and the 700 Club, Gretchen and Bob Passantino and John Trott of Cornerstone Magazine published an article debunking the book Satan's Underground. After this article came out, Harvest House ceased publication of the pile of crap, but it was reissued by Pelican in 1991. It is still available, and, as if I need to mention it, there are people such as the one who wrote, "I read the article by Cornerstone Magazine, just a bunch of he said, she said, though they demand evidence from the author, knowing full well how Satanists cover up their tracks, they provide none themselves." It goes on for a few more paragraphs, you get the idea. Witchvox also addresses this one. This leads us to the next topic, Satanic TV. Take it away, Oprah.
Rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity.
Rachel is in disguise to protect her identity. This embarrassingly transparent, sensationalistic device was used by every major talk show at the time when they interviewed satanic ritual abuse survivors. Sometimes the faces were blocked out, voices altered, or the survivor would appear in shadow. The members of satanic cults would surely be watching these shows in order to identify these snitches and come after them. But Oprah, Geraldo, Larry, and Phil, and all of them, were well prepared in advance. Thus, the disguises.
You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. and it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were...
Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country, not just my own family.
Really?
Last night I was digging in the cemetery. Up jumps a man, all black and hairy. Well, he looked at me with his beady red eyes, and I'm telling you, I got quite a surprise. As I looked at him, my legs turned to lead as the monster reared his ugly head. With mud and worms hanging from his back, he outstretched his arms and his bones give a crack. It was then that I realized it was time to go, so I dropped my shovel and sprang to my toes. I raced through the cemetery with great speed, but he was right there behind me, wanting a feed. A feed. It was then that I tripped, stumbled and fell. He screamed past me, heading for hell. I crawled on my graveyard, hands and knees. I got to the wall, I knew I was free. Free! And now that I'm safe and in the street, it's taught me a lesson about digging deep. And now at home I cannot sleep, 'cause I'm always frightened of what I might meet. Yes, I'm always frightened of what I might meet. Well, I'm always frightened of what I might meet. Yes, I'm always frightened of what I might meet. I'm always frightened of what I might
And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
So when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I've blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought.
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know.
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in their family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not. Or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, no, it's not a very
we kind of know
thing.
that. This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so yeah, you witnessed the sacrifice.
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh.
Ritual sacrifice of infants? Really? Okay, Rachel, where's the evidence? Yes, of course. The infants were provided by women who were either too overweight for anyone to notice a pregnancy, or women who hid away while visibly pregnant. And all of this done specifically to provide a baby just so that it could be killed to please the devil. which is an entity that is not present in the Jewish theological construct, but according to Rachel, her Jewish family has been doing this for hundreds of years, generation after generation. Well, they have maintained a respectable public image, and their secret had never been discovered until Rachel decided to spill the beans on the Oprah Winfrey Show sometime in the late 80s or early 90s. And nobody but nobody is standing up to say, "Hey Rachel, you're out to fucking lunch." This level of absurdity was typical of the stories from SRA survivors, as was the credulity of the audiences to whom it was directed. Why? Look at the roots. It came from the fundamentalist Christian worldview, in which a ludicrous message was directed toward a gullible following, and that was the standard procedure.
Stumbling through the local cemetery, I saw an old creature who looked soberly scary. In his hands he had a shovel and he was digging away. I started to split and he stopped me to say,
"Oh, don't be startled at what you see. It's just that little old grave robber me."
Must be nuts, Daddy. You've had too much wine.
Oh, I robbed graves for Baron Frankenstein.
Oh, well, I've known the Baron for 2 years or more. Hey, you must be his assistant. Ugly Eagle.
Yes, now excuse me while I dig. My master has plans for something very big, you know.
Mind if I help you? I've been looking for a job ever since my partner was eaten by the blob. Hey, haven't I seen you on TV riding on a wine wagon?
That's right, you know.
You don't need a tester, do you, Pally?
Test your head with a shovel.
Oh, hey, wait, wait a minute, Pally, wait a minute. This thing's gone too far. Where am I?
You're at the Bloody Go-Go Club. You passed out, you've been sleeping on the bar.
Oh, Daddy, if you just knew where I dreamed I'd been. You sure you didn't slip me a Mickey, Finn?
That same social construct carried over into mainstream society. Furthermore, it was an opportunity for the exploitative sector of the mass media to make plenty of money peddling sensationalistic garbage. Talk shows are like tabloids. They're not known for, nor have they ever claimed to be, the pinnacle of journalistic integrity. They are designed to appeal to an audience that desires schlock, and they deliver that schlock. There has always been a segment of any population who will believe what they want to believe despite the dearth of evidence and lack of any legitimate reason to believe it. Within the evangelical Christian subculture, the desire to believe in a conspiratorial network of Satan worshippers is understandable. It validates their paranoid delusions as well as legitimizing some of their favorite biblical fairy tales. The desire to believe such things for people outside that group is much more difficult to explain. One factor is that people tend to believe what they are told. Urban legends are passed by word of mouth by people who usually think they are repeating an actual event. Then the story is almost universally known, and a lot of people accept them as fact. A woman recently told me about how Art Linkletter's daughter jumped out of a window because she was under the influence of LSD and thought she could fly. The fact is that she committed suicide and drugs had nothing to do with it. This happened in 1969, at the time when LSD scare stories were circulating. Most of these stories were fictional. These legends were disseminated as an attempt to dissuade people from trying the drug. Some of the teachers I had in junior high school repeated these tales as if they were fact. One would think that such relics would have vanished by now. No. Not more than a month ago, a middle-aged man stated that women have more ribs than men do. This myth was debunked over 400 years ago. Why would something so ridiculous still be repeated? Because naturally skeptical thinkers are relatively rare in the general population. I'll bring up another example from my own experience. After the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City, The news reported that the attack was carried out by Middle Eastern terrorists. I was at work at the time, and my co-workers expressed their outrage toward those horrible terrorists over there in Iraq or Pakistan or wherever. I questioned it. International terrorists using a large homemade bomb in a truck parked outside a building in Oklahoma City? This sounded wrong to me, and I said so. I said that this had nothing to do with Middle Eastern terrorists, and that it was most likely the actions of a couple of dumb redneck kids. I stated that such terrorists would not use large, crudely made bomb, and that they would not choose Oklahoma City as a target. They would choose New York or Washington, D.C. The co-workers chose to believe the news report on the radio and acted as if I was a nut. The next day, after the information was corrected, I brought the subject up at work and nobody wanted to talk about it. I would never claim to be right every time. Certainly, I have called bullshit on information that turned out to be true. Many times. The stories from the so-called SRA survivors were occasionally met with superstition. Here is a clip from another Oprah episode in which the former satanic cult member is questioned by someone who doesn't believe him. Watch Oprah defend the crackpot.
I was a follower of the Satanist Church in Chicago here. On Walpurgis Nacht, I was the head acolyte for that specific ceremony, and at the end of it, we wound up murdering someone.
What happened in the ritual where someone was murdered, and how were they murdered?
They were stabbed 7 times with knives because in
Chicago.
Yes, it was.
What year?
About 8 years ago. So it was about 80, 81, and the ritual was a witch's Sabbath, and it got out of hand, and the high priest brought out these 7 daggers, and they impaled him in the form of a cross with the 7 daggers.
My first question would be, were you a member of the Church of Satan, a card-carrying member of the Church of Satan?
Yes, sir.
The pumpkin man is orange, he has an orange face. His brother Joe is orange, and so's his sister Grace. And whether he's at my house or clinging to the vine, I'm so glad that Mr. Pumpkin is a friend of mine. The pumpkin man is orange, he has an orange shell. He's happy being orange, as anyone can tell. And whether he's at my house or clinging to the vine, I'm so glad that Mr. Pumpkin is a friend of mine. The pumpkin man is orange, he has an orange nose. He's proud of being orange, the brighter that he grows. And whether he's at my house or clinging to the vine, I'm so glad that Mr. Pumpkin is a friend of mine.
And who was the grotto leader?
I don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Not anymore, no.
Were you prosecuted?
Like I said, I had a nervous breakdown, and I have partial amnesia, specifically about that night. The only thing I can really remember about that night itself is that I walked in, I got my acolyte robes on, and the next thing I remember seeing was this guy laying on the table with 7 daggers sticking out of his chest.
Did you participate in the stabbing of the guy?
I don't remember.
You have made several statements that don't fit with the Church of Satan. For example, there is only one high priest. There is not a local one. We do not have any rituals.
Only one high priest. Is that you?
That for the Church of Satan was Anton LaVey. Now, it has no ritual is called a witch's Sabbath, per se. It
While
certainly does not have any
witch's
ritual murder activities, and it has no title called acolyte at all. A person who is a first-degree member in the Church of Satan is referred to as a Satanist, and there are no titles such as that at all. Furthermore, I found
So you're telling him he's lying?
I'm telling him he's lying. I'm saying
From
that
what we can gather.
he has given us statements in great detail concerning events that took place, but he has not named a single name, nor is there any record, as far as I'm aware from what he said, that the police investigated.
I do remember several of the names of the people there.
Did you tell them to the police?
Yes, I gave those names to the police, but I refused to name them on national television for two reasons. One, they might not like it and come after me again, and that scares the hell out of me.
Don't you think that they already know that you are talking about them here right now? If
They
in
may
fact
know
it took
that
place?
they may know that.
Wait a minute, how could they know that? How do they know that? Because they're watching or because they just sort of feel it?
The same reason that he would...
The guy with the corny eyebrows is Michael Aquino. He was the leader of the Temple of Set. We can see how Oprah and her audience respond to skepticism with hostility. If we do not feel sympathy for the poor victim, we are cold, heartless bastards. Even though the idiot was not able to supply a single piece of evidence for his ridiculous story and did not supply a satisfactory answer to any of the questions, the audience still believed the lying sack of shit. According to the religious tolerance site, Geraldo Rivera had the biggest impact on selling this crap. Between 1987 and 1995, Geraldo made several episodes of his show claiming that there was such a thing as over 1 million satanic cult members committing horrible, violent crimes for the explicit purpose of nothing more than making a fictitious character happy. well-organized doers of evil deeds leave not a trace of evidence, because they are so amazingly skilled at covering it up. Many believers claim that the lack of evidence for the existence of satanic ritual abuse was evidence for the existence of satanic ritual abuse. What the fuck was that again? No joke. The lack of evidence for their existence was evidence for their existence. Before I get into talking about Geraldo, I will show another clip from a talk show. It's a Larry King episode in which his guests are two SRA survivors who sued their mother for sexual abuse, and an SRA skeptic, Jeffrey Victor, author of the book Satanic Panic: The Creation of a Contemporary Legend. This was published in 1993. The book is available at Amazon. The following is an edited Larry King episode. To set the scene, Larry had one SRA survivor in person and her sister on the telephone. Jeffrey Victor is in person, and there are some questions from outside callers.
Yes.
Did the jury award money?
No, they did not.
What did they award?
They didn't award anything. They found her negligent, but they did not award any money.
There were many different kinds. Sexual abuse was involved. There was some physical abuse that included some scalding and things like that when I was very young. As my father began to be more drawn into it, it included child prostitution and things like that, as well as actually being drawn into groups where there were ritualistic practices going on.
But when you got into adulthood, couldn't you just walk away?
No, because I didn't remember it. I was completely dissociated.
Okay, Bonnie, you were made pregnant when you were 11 years old?
Yes, I was.
Had a child?
Yes, I did.
Is that your daughter?
No, not this daughter.
What happened to that child?
That child was sacrificed within the cult when she was about 6 months old.
Sacrificed how?
By being stabbed, and I was coerced into doing the act myself with my own child.
The police never found out about this?
The groups are extremely careful to cover up all evidence through using crematoriums and things like that. At least that's how I understand it.
Ladies, we're joined by Jeffrey Victor, professor of sociology at Jamestown Community College in New York. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that it's essentially like the Salem witchcraft trials.
We are witches quite contrary. We are merry, scary, very, playing pranks extraordinary. Of us you had best be wary. You'll awaken, shaken, quaking with the mischief that we're making. Merry, scary, very, we are the witches three. Ack-a-lack-a-ching, ack-a-lack-a-chow. Here comes three more witches now. We are witches in the kitchen, making recipes bewitching, cooking up a pot of double, bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. Hocus pocus, dominocus, you'll be feeling okey-docus. Merry, scary, very, we are the witches three. Ack-a-lack-a-ching, ack-a-lack-a-chow. Here comes three more witches now. We are witches in a trio, counting 1, a 2, a 3. One plays oboe, one plays fiddle, one's the drummer in the middle. We get all the spirits prancing, skeletons and goblins dancing. Merry, scary, very, we are the witches three. Ack-a-lack-a-ching, ack-a-lack-a-chow. Here comes three more witches now. We are witches three who travel. Oh, what havoc we unravel. We put toads in every doorway. Poland, England, France, and Norway. China, Carolina, Italy. We bewitch the place so prettily. Merry, scary, very, we are the witches three.
It's a form of collective behavior that's sweeping the country. And
the cults themselves?
No. There's no evidence whatsoever, no substantial evidence, no verifiable evidence of any organized group like a mafia that follows Satanism and commits crimes.
Like the Geraldo Rivera specials.
Right.
That is not true.
What does exist, however, is a kind of collective behavior.
To come out. Right. If it's not that, what is it?
They are absolutely sincere in expressing their experience, but their experience comes from the therapist. It's like therapists who believe in reincarnation have patients that, after some therapy, reveal reincarnation experiences.
Bonnie, how do you respond?
Well, I respond, first of all, by saying that at no time in therapy did Dr. Moss ever lead me toward anything.
And conspiracy theories are very seductive to believe.
Bonnie, do you remember where the murder took place?
A great deal of activity was in some caves in mountains, but the point that I would really like to make is that I don't believe either my sister or I, or during the trial were we claiming there was any kind of nationwide conspiracy. Our point is that this kind of abuse goes on within families, and then families band together, passing down pain from generation to generation.
You buy that, Jeffrey?
I
I think Jeffrey was concerned by the fact that people do think they are nationalists. They're national cults everywhere, and you never said that. But his concern is that people may think
there are many people around the country, in many cases like this, of people making claims that there are nationally organized networks of
But what do they gain out of it? I mean, what are Bonnie and Patty gaining out of this?
I think they gain an explanation for their painful experience.
Which may be another kind of experience.
Which is another
You don't
kind
deny
of
they may have had child abuse.
It's entirely possible. They may have been victims of child abuse. It's entirely possible that it's not necessarily so, but it's entirely possible they may have been abused by their parents or one of their parents. But people who have dissociative disorder find it difficult to get their thinking together. They're kind of like sponges that soak up the diseases of the age. And
but 10 out of 12 people believe them.
10 out of 12 people believe that there were communists in every little village in the United States. 10 out of 12 people believe that the witches were going to take over Massachusetts Bay Colony. No, he was a Christian therapist. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration and training in divinity.
Has been dealing with these kinds of dissociative disorders and multiple personality disorder for 9 years, which makes him something of an expert.
Los Angeles, hello.
Yes, Larry, great show. Doctor, I'm on your side. I can't buy any of this. These women can't produce any shred of evidence. The one woman says she was molested in caves. Where are the caves? Out in Palmdale? Were they in Irvine, Tustin? You know, can you take us to the caves and show it to us?
mostly ghostly. Up and down my spine a new sensation falls. Vastly, ghastly, the way she floats on air and walks through walls. Indeed, she's mostly ghostly. Try to kiss her and she'll vanish into gloom. Mighty, flighty, it's hard to say just when she'll reappear on a broom. Other girls I've known were simply dimply, just another standard pretty face. But this one haunts me so, I daren't let her go. It's so thrilling, really chilling, when we share a brief embrace. Because she's mostly ghostly. What a mystic gift to have her on my arm. Truly, ghouly, every hour with her's the hour of harm. Is ghostly, clearly the most different girl I've ever seen. Truly, ghouly, every day's a holiday when I'm with her, a holiday, yes, every day with her is Halloween.
I can understand why no one wants to believe any of these things. I wish I didn't have to believe them, but I understand why no one wants to believe. No one could possibly want to believe this, but it's happening, and we need to begin to break our denial down and look at it. And the jury was able to do that by listening to the three of us over the course of that trial.
Now, how'd they get away with it, Bonnie? Or wouldn't you know, since it's memory?
I know some things, but I don't think I can give really accurate answers to a lot of that. I know the evidence is often burnt. It's hidden away. It's extremely important that it not be known about. I assume there's some burials, but I can't give you a really accurate answer about that, only that it needs to thrive in the dark on denial to keep going.
Jeffrey, you're keeping all your options open, right?
I think that this is the folklore of the age.
Those excerpts were from the tail end of the Satanic Panic era. Since that time, many of the people who had repressed memories evoked by therapists have retracted their claims. Several of these so-called therapists have been sued. Notice how Bonnie told the man on the phone, someone who she did not know, that he just didn't want to believe it. He would rather be in denial, because he is just one of those folks who can't handle the hard truth. Whenever you ask for evidence and get an analysis of your personality instead of the evidence, when I left off in part 3, I was talking about Geraldo Rivera and his impact on mass hysteria that revolved around Satan worshipers. The Religious Tolerance website sets Geraldo apart from the other talk show hosts who promoted the satanic malarkey for two reasons. One, he probably had a greater influence on society than the others, and two, he was the only one who issued a retraction and an apology for promoting erroneous information that had a detrimental effect on society. The site lists 4 Geraldo episodes in which he disseminated the hooey about underground satanic cult activity. The first of these aired on November 19, 1987, and the last one on June 25, 1995. On December 12, 1995, Geraldo is quoted as saying, "I want to announce publicly that as a firm believer of the Believe the Children movement of the 1980s that started with the McMartin trials in California, but now I am convinced that I was terribly wrong, and that many innocent people were convicted and went to prison as a result. And I am equally positive that the repressed memory therapy movement is also a bunch of crap. After that, Satanic Panic left mainstream society and crawled back into the Fundy subculture. But the damage had already been done. The McMartin preschool fiasco started in 1983 when workers at the school were accused of sexually abusing the children. The trials continued until 1990. No convictions were obtained. There were several other cases in which people were accused of imaginary crimes. I am not very knowledgeable of this aspect of the era. I encourage others to make a video on it. Most of the YouTube videos on the McMartin case are by the crackpot, Ted Gunderson. That crafty devil had pulled one over on much of the American public, but there were those who could spot Satan's sneaky shenanigans a mile away, and they did not sit back and let the young minds of good Christian Americans be poisoned by the evil sounds called rock and roll. Before we get into the Satanic Panic era, I will provide some background information to show the evolution of the anti-rock and roll holy rollers. Opposition to the musical style began almost instantly after it started getting airplay. In 1954, when Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock was released, the God-fearing good old boys launched their mission from the Almighty to turn that clock backwards. The first people to vocally denounce rock music were members of racist groups such as the White Citizens Council of Alabama. The name alone would give Dracula the creeps. In April of 1956, Asa Carter of the aforementioned gang of thugs stated that bebop, rock and roll, and all Negro music are designed to force Negro culture on the South. The hostility toward rock and roll was intense. It was an avenue for narrow-minded, hateful zealots to express their inane bigotry. They considered rock to be a vehicle toward racial integration, an expression of overt sexuality. They thought the young people of America would listen to this music and it would have a profound effect on society, changing the way that people think and behave, making permissible, even acceptable, so many things that the members of the White Citizen Council considered to be immoral and indecent. As it turned out, those motherfuckers was right. Racists and puritanical nutballs gained political power in their crusade against the new music by appealing to the concerns of the parents of teenagers.
Well, I trust you are sufficiently chilled to your spine. I spent several hours wandering, in the dark, of course, watching all parts of this lovely, heartwarming series. It made my heart... You see, it would be fine to let the kinks think that all of us were part of a conspiracy, if only the real conspiracy weren't currently running things and throwing its pink conspirators in prison on false charges. It's all well and good until you realize the conspiracy has tasers and really bad taste in food. Otherwise, you'd think they'd be content to derive their occult fantasies from their own holy scriptures and tell each other these tales in their own dark living rooms. Instead, I'm telling you in yours. Don't let this information fall into the wrong hands.